r/ask Reddit. What experience of yours is so crazy you don't tell people about it because they wouldn't believe you? If you want to join my giveaway for $500, subscribe and you will be automatically entered. When I was younger I worked at a popular theme park in the UK as a ride assistant. One of the rides I worked on was the River Rapids. Two young Scouse lads who had obviously been drinking got on and it was clear they were going to be a pain in the ass. As their raft came towards the end, they both were running around the outsides of it. The raft hits the wall and they both fell in. This is near the lift section of the ride, which if they'd been snagged would have torn them up badly. I ran down and God knows how managed to pull them both out. They were both swiftly escorted to the medical center and I'm assuming off park. The same day, after I finish work, I went to go and see a friend for a few hours and on my way home I follow a car that is all over the place. The car hits a curb and flips onto its roof. I stop my car, run across, yank the doors open and pull both of the occupants out. Same two lads I'd pulled out of the water at work earlier in the day. Once when I was 8 I was climbing out of the bathtub after showering. Since I was wet and shit, my mom wrapped me up in a towel so my hands were wrapped as well. I ended up tripping over the edge of the bathtub and face planted onto the ground, where I just laid there kinda comatose for a second. So I tried to get up, blood flowing down my face from a cut in my head and my nose, and my bucket of crabs nearby, this was a seaside resort, toppled over and went all over me. And they were like in a blood frenzy or something because they pinched me all over, so I started rolling on the ground. Lovely experience BTW. My family kinda just stared at me. I bled from my nose for 3 hours after being rescued from the crabs and got sent to hospital, where my nose actually wasn't broken. My family refuses to acknowledge it ever happened even though I have a hospital bracelet with that date. Oddest thing ever. When I was much younger, preteen, I was outside watching shooting stars. It was that time of year where you can see lots of comets fly by. It was the middle of the night and I was laying in the grass just enjoying the stars and comets. My older stepsister had just gone inside to grab a drink. Out of nowhere the entire night sky lit up bright blue for a nanosecond. All that was left when it faded was a blue streak across the sky and what looked kinda like a ship at the front of the streak. I didn't know what I was seeing, but it looked like it was rotating slowly. It eventually disappeared, but the trail was still in the sky. Immediately I rushed inside to try and get people out to see it. By the time they got outside it had faded completely. Nobody believed me. I found out later it was just a SpaceX launch. But I thought I had seen a genuine UFO for years. I know I saw it, but I didn't tell anyone because I'd sound crazy. Edit. Here's the video that made me realize what it was I saw. https://www.youtube.com/watch?v2k96ay0tlw. Edit 2. There weren't comets. It was a meteor shower. Got the words mixed up. Not a meteorologist lol. Was crossing the border at the Golden Triangle from Thailand into Myanmar. Had a heat stroke due to dehydration and passed out in the middle of the street right after the passport control. Woke up to 5 armed soldiers pointing rifles in my face. Don't speak a word of Thai or any other Asian language. I signaled I need to drink water with my hands and they gave me a Coca-Cola and helped me sit down in a nearby chair. When I was 9 or 10 years old, I was walking around in our flat and wondering what was itching below my foot. So I looked and I had a thumbtack sticking all the way inside my heel. I have no clue why, but it didn't hurt at all. I had a huge shock though. Also interesting to note that the hole is still there 12 years later. When I was a teenager I almost got run over by Robert Pattinson in my hometown. It's a smaller city between Bruges and Ghent. He was driving a Mercedes, probably on his way from Brussels to the hotel he was staying in on the coast. I'm 100% sure it was him. He was in Brussels for a premiere for the latest Twilight movie at the time. Only told my dad. I saw a girl who contracted a rare African parasite shoot crack, causing tiny worms to crawl out of the hole in her arm and from the corners of her eyes. It happened. I'm sure it did. I saw the worms. She held one up and said, "See? I told you." This is what they look like. I threw it on the floor and burned it with a lighter. I wasn't even on drugs because I had a drug test for probation in the morning. It's like my own brain is trying to convince me it didn't happen, but I'm sure of it. I fell off a 35-foot bridge onto concrete and barely even hurt myself. The most I got was a badly bruised thigh and a pretty bad graze on my elbow. Whenever I tell this to people I roll, they all call me out. Edit. Don't ask how I fell off of the bridge. Shit happens. Man. Got a knife put to my throat as a joke once when I was little and decided to go play outside on my own. Only told my parents years later because I didn't want them to worry. Weird child logic. Looking back at it. I was playing with snow on the top of my building and then I hear a bullet pass next to me. So I proned, then I heard a gunshot from far and right after that a bullet hits the glass behind me. I released, it's a sniper. He shoot 5 bullets or 4. I don't remember exactly, but none hit me. I went down, told my mother, but she didn't believe me and didn't care that much. I live in Syria. One time after school I was emptying my bag on my bed. I had a sandwich wrapped in cling wrap from lunch that I didn't eat. I dropped the sandwich on the floor and I went to pick it up. I couldn't find it anywhere. I checked under my bed, in my bag, all over the floor and under any items. I never found that sandwich. I used to sweat blue for a few months. My clothes, nails, and phone cover all got stained blue. It went away after a while on its own, which was good because the doctors couldn't figure it out. This happened 8 years ago. I, 10 years old, was walking my dog down the street with my father, and my dog decided to take a piss on the car wheel of a Mercedes-Benz. A couple minutes later that exact Mercedes-Benz slowly drives past us and then U-turns around and slowly drives past us again. This time he opens his window and shouts "fuck you" to us multiple times without explanation. After cursing at us for like a minute straight he speeds off back into the neighborhood, so we just continue on our walk. As soon as we get back into our street we see the man walking towards us and pull out a gun. He aims it at us and shouts "your dog pee my wheel" over and over again. Of course my dad gets very angry and shouts back at him, "Do you think this is the fucking Wild West?" He then starts shooting at us but misses completely. Then my dad sprints at him and manages to tackle him to the ground. I go and get my mother and we call the police. Meanwhile my dad still has the guy pinned down. The police come and take the guy away and we then find out that he was a big Chinese drug dealer in the area. So this is basically the story of how my dad took down a Chinese gangster whilst unarmed. I fell asleep listening to a CD one day and a little bit later woke up to it still playing and on at a part where they did a skit before a song. The skit was kind of funny but there was one part I couldn't hear, so I got out of bed to rewind it, and when it played back it was entirely in French. I don't speak French but could understand what they were saying clear as day a minute earlier. I don't know what happened. When I was 6 I was in a car with my aunt. While she was driving I opened door and fell out. Luckily she didn't drive fast. Probably she just started driving. I can't remember. So I wasn't hurt. I told that to my family several times already and they refused to believe. Few weeks ago, I was with my aunt and she told me that story and asked me do I remember that. I have some vivid memories from when I was a baby. Most people's earliest memories are from when they're toddlers. But I remember bits and pieces of being an infant and getting breastfed by my mom. I also recall listening to her singing songs to me while rocking me and sitting in my crib for hours listening to music playing. I don't remember everything day by day but there are quite a few memories from that time. My earliest memory that I can fully recall is hearing my mom and dad arguing in clear view of my crib. I don't remember what they were saying but I know they were shouting at each other and I was getting upset because of it. Since I was in a crib, I know I couldn't have been a year old yet. Posted this on Reddit already once, and people thought I was making it up. I joined the Mile High Club. It was on a flight from New York to London. I just wanted to join the Mile High Club for a thrill. Not because I had a fetish for fucking on airplanes or anything. It was quite uncomfortable and cramped really. We had a difficult time finding a position that worked. As I was coming we heard banging on the door. The flight attendant had somehow figured out and he began scolding us. "What you did is illegal." Really giving us shit. We were panicking and trying to come up with a plan, worrying that maybe we'd get into serious trouble once we landed. In the middle of all this, the flight attendant came back with 2 glasses of champagne and winked at us. Once we realized he had been trolling us, our mood changed instantly from worried to amused as fuck. Not sure if this counts, but I have a handful of chronic illnesses that basically cause me to be in significant pain more often than not. Despite this, I consider myself a very happy person and try my best not to let it get me down. But it certainly is difficult getting people to believe me, especially since I look fine. Whenever I describe my experience with these illnesses, people tend to think I'm exaggerating. During a trip to Williamsburg, I woke up in the middle of the night to an either Civil or Revolutionary War soldier, too dark and scared shitless to tell, sitting on the foot of the bed. He got up and turned around, and I swear it was a boy no older than 15-16 and had a ragged bullet hole wound just below his neck. I'll remember that on my deathbed. I once left my completely fine and working mobile phone in the kitchen and went to lay down for a little on my roommate's couch. He and I were alone at home, and he is a very active gamer and was basically gaming throughout my nap. When I woke up, I wanted to get my phone, but when I went and got it, it had the signal for SIM not connected on it. So I open up the phone to look at my SIM, just to find the metal part of the SIM card completely scratched and utterly destroyed. Of course, I asked my roommate what he did to my phone, but he just said he was gaming the whole time and was just as astounded as I was. To this day, we are completely flabbergasted and do not know what happened. But I am pretty positive that we have a poltergeist in our flat. I once fired my rifle in a firefight in Afghanistan while holding the arm of my colleague while my pants were around my ankles. I was doing this because I had to take a poop, and I was hanging my butt over an edge of a cliff, and my buddy was turned facing the other direction because I can't poop with people watching. Well, mid-push on a big log coming out my butt, we started taking fire and I was holding his trigger hand. I unslung my rifle, flipped the safety, and began shooting off to my right while still pooping. The biggest problem with all this was that it was a no wiper. After a few shots and me pinching off what was hanging, he let go and I pulled my pants up while he got into a fighting position. After the fight, I smelled like poop. BC I didn't wipe for 2 days until we got back to base. I did eventually wipe, but the damage to my underwear was already done. Those racing stripes never fully got washed out and I retired those underwear after that mission. None of our guys were hurt that day, but I did hold a ceremony for the lost whitey tighties by burning them. RIP in pieces. Edit. Forgot a word. 2 years ago, I was visiting an old friend of mine who I hadn't seen in a while, and in a call prior to that she claimed she was possibly haunted. At the time she was struggling very much with depression and drug addiction, so I didn't put much thought into that. Fast forward, we are at her place cooking at the stove when a box of chocolate chips launches out of a cupboard. Not just falling down, it straight up got yeeted a few feet. We basically shrugged it off, lol. Next day I was showering and the tap water turned itself on. I was on a train and this train had one of those chains which you pull in case of an emergency and it stops the train, and if you pull it for no reason you can face up to 2 years in prison and a huge fine. So I was just sitting, and when I decided to get up to go to the washroom, I was kind of stuck, so I used the nearest thing to help me get up, and what I pulled was the chain. Suddenly the train stopped and I was like, oh crap, here I go to the prison. When suddenly people started running out of the train. PS, the train had no doors. You would understand if you know what an average local Indian train looks like. I don't know about other countries. And what I realized was that a compartment of the train was on fire. So that's how I survived from going to prison and accidentally saved the train. I told this story to a friend but he would not believe me, so I just let it go. TLDR, I saved train and no go prison. One day, completely out of the blue, my daughter, 8, started telling me she wanted to look out the window to see shooting stars. I told her it's very rare to see any shooting stars where we live, Yonkers, NY. She was really adamant that we should look and try to see one anyway. So I walk with her over to our living room window and look out with her. I swear not 10 seconds had passed before a meteor went streaking by, closer than any I had ever seen. You could see the trail it left in the sky and it glowed bright red. She got so excited and ran to tell my wife that she saw one. My wife does not believe that to me or my daughter saw a beetle that quickly. I swear on my life it happened. For 1 week when I got the flu, my farts would whistle no matter what position I was in. My dog kept thinking I was calling him. I opened my bedroom door as a kid to see a creepy adult man with his back to me, hunched over, staring out the window. I said sorry, closed the door and ran to my parents. They checked the room and everything was normal. 10 years later I was checking out a cute neighbor girl in their yard and I heard a tiny sorry behind me and the door closed. Nothing there. I was home alone at the time. I just jerked off afterward, but I knew something weird had happened. Not really just one, but it repeats itself. I always get this deja vu sentiment if I was to call it, but not that something happened to me before, but I saw it in my mind. I see myself doing something normal, weird, stupid, whatever. Then few days later that thing happens. I'm starting to believe I make this up on a constant basis. I have lived an entire day twice. It is like deja vu but extended version. And that was a very weird day with things happening which has least probability of happening. It is almost like I woke up in the morning after a weird hyper-realistic dream. But all the things in the dream were unlikely to happen in real life. Like for example, it involved only 15 students coming to my class that day, while in reality the number has never ever dropped below 45 out of 60 students. Then the weird thing is that everything in my dream came true exactly until I broke the chain by doing something which was not there in the dream. In dream, I yelled at the principal. In real life I restrained from doing that. It was the weirdest thing ever. I was driving home about 8 years ago at night along my usual route. It's a narrow straight road that has no streetlights but is reasonably busy even at night and is about 2 miles long before I reach my exit. I'm driving, listening to music and contemplating. Well, nothing when I notice there's a light in the sky following me. There's a tiny runway near my old house used mainly by crop dusters. So I assume it's a small plane. Then I notice another. Then another and another until there's at least 10 lights all following me as I drive down this road. They're not in any kind of formation and there's not a single sound except the sound of my engine. I pull over and they slow down and hover as I get out of the car. I'm the only one on the road at this point. As I reach back into my car to get my phone to take some video, they suddenly all move at incredible speed to a single straight line and zoom off into the distance at incredible speed. I stood there stunned for at least 5 minutes, knowing that no one would ever believe me. I saw a bloody ghost in my shower. She left me a piece of jewelry and a message. I'm an atheist and I don't believe in ghosts. So, I took the object to my grandmother's Catholic church, told them what I saw, gave them the message and the object, and then I left. Because fuck all of that. I have enough problems. I saw 3 UFOs that were orange balls that came out the Hudson River and floated around the buildings around. My grandma claimed she was communicating with them in some way. And a black origami bird flew in her face and out within a millisecond. My grandmother would always say she was abducted by aliens and had a chip in her brain. I used to call her crazy as a kid. Never really believed her until that day. Nobody believes either of us now, lol. When I was younger I was walking down the road in my hometown in Ireland. I'm recording the cars driving past on my pink little Motorola phone. A car drives past and slows down. Rolls the window down. It was a guy driving another guy with a black hat and super pale skin. I freak because it's an adult who slowed their car down and started looking at me. Stranger danger, etc. I delete the video and quickly walk back home, lich 6 minutes away. I tell my mother I saw either Michael Jackson or Elvis. Whichever one was alive and has pale skin and a black hat, I didn't know the difference, in a car and they looked at me. She says lol, okay. That was probably Tom from a few blocks away who is pale and has a hat. Fast forward to Michael Jackson's death and it's announced he was in my hometown when I was that age bringing his children to a kids jumping jacks. I had video evidence of Michael Jackson slowing his car down and looking at me when he was in Ireland and I deleted it because I was scared. Barely anyone believes me. I bent down and turned on a table lamp. My face was directly over the top and straight above the bulb. The bulb shattered and not one piece landed on me at all. It was like I had a force field around me or something as it went everywhere on either side of me. It was weird AF and I have never told anyone. Just changed the bulb. Thanked my lucky stars and kept on going through my day. My friend and I once missed the last train home after a gig and wandered around a nearby harbour, killing time until the trains started up again. A drunk man, around 50, stumbled out of a building and invited us onto his boat. We sat with him drinking rum for a few hours while he regaled us with stories about all the sex parties he'd hosted on this boat. I didn't believe him, but I was warm and had a drink in hand, so I humored him. He eventually pulled a lever near the front which opened a secret door to a sex dungeon, filled with all kinds of bondage gear and sex toys. We then added each other on Facebook and my friend and I went to catch our train back to London. Edit. He would tell us about the numerous women that were half his age that would come from all over the country to attend these parties. He would also tell us that he was absolutely, unequivocally not gay, but would totally suck off the other guys in attendance because it was the polite thing to do. A pirate hero. Saw a UFO with my boyfriend about 3 years ago. We were camping in this pine plantation in the middle of nowhere. Technically you're not supposed to camp there, but there was no one to tell us not to. It was sunset and we were looking at this big star in the distance, talking about whether it was Mars or Jupiter or some planet because it was the first star we could see as the sun was setting. We were kinda sitting there for maybe 10-15 minutes just talking about space and planets when all of a sudden the fucking giant bright star slowly moved sideways and then just faded away. We both lost our collective shit. Now I've seen satellites fly over and meteors and this was nothing like this. We thought maybe a drone, but what kind of drone stays in one spot without moving for that long? I have read other UFO experiences since then which talk about see bright stars moving and disappearing like that. I can't explain what I saw that day. This is a short story. You're welcome. I was on a fishing trip in early July this year. It was a great calm day on the Irish coast. I had just caught a halibut and put it in my cooler when I look up and see a man at sea. This man was just standing there watching me fish. He was standing on nothing. He was standing on the water just staring at me. He looked down and dissipated quickly. I went out on my boat to the spot he was and found nothing he could have been standing on. I then looked into the water where I thought he may have looked. What I saw there will haunt me forever. There was a small aircraft under the water. The pilot had decomposed to the bones. He was wearing the same clothes as the standing man. Edit. Spelling. Me and this super busty chick that I was crushing on in college were the last two people left at a mutual friend's party. She's way out of my league and was rumored to be dating a guy on the football team. I'm a goofy fuck. So I start to play wrestling with her. Then she gets into it, and next thing I see is a giant boob pop out of her shirt. I of course get the hugest boner from peeping her goods. She notices me being hard and next you know and making out and I'm playing with her boobs. In the moment, I remove her clothing and we start having sex. After giving her the most disappointing 2 minutes of her life, we get dressed and one of my friends comes in the room and she leaves. I told him I hooked up with her and he starts laughing at me and calls me a liar. So yeah, I hooked up with the girl of my dreams and didn't tell anyone because no one would believe me. When I was 6, my summer camp lost me for over an hour on a trip. They got my face painted so that my mom wouldn't be able to tell I was sobbing. She didn't find out until recently. I'm 33. The first day of college freshman year I was walking down the quad when these sorority girls asked if I was a freshman. To which I replied yes. And they said we love freshmen. Come with us. So I went back to the sorority house where they proceeded to initiate me to the school by making me get on one knee, pouring vodka into my mouth, then stripping down naked with me and pre-gaming for like an hour nude in the sorority house my first day ever in college. It was fucking wild. And none of my friends believed me. They thought I stole it from a porno or something. But it is to this day the most dumbfounded I've ever been that something like this was actually happening to me. Man, I miss college. I told this story in a fairly popular Tumblr post 5ish years ago, so it might be familiar. In 10th grade, I was 15 or 16. My history teacher made a Twitter account that he was very proud of and would give us frequent updates on its progress in class. One day he walked in and announced that he hit 100 followers that morning. Right as he says this, a kid in my class pulls out his phone and says something along the lines of, "Oh yeah? Well, I'm gonna unfollow you. Haha, back to 99. So my teacher walks right up to him, leans in real close, and says, "I got 99 followers but a bitch ain't one." I once managed to plug 3x USB peripherals into my laptop the right way up first time without looking. This happened in August. Me and my cousin were biking and skateboarding to the park. When we were about to cross the street there was one car a few intersections, so we started cross. Turns out that idiot was on his phone. He starts speeding, but we are not worried because he still had to go through 2 stop signs, but being distracted from his phone he just ran through the stop signs and now he was coming straight for us. I got to the other side quickly, but my cousin, who didn't hear me, was still going slowly, and then at the last second before the car hit him he jumped out of the way safely. When he jumped, that caused the board to hit their windshield and went inside the car. It was a convertible with its top down. 5 seconds after, the person puts the car in reverse, pulls up beside us and says, "You know you could have died, right?" And with that he sped off with my cousin's skateboard. No one believed us because they thought it was just an excuse for losing the board. I lived in the tropics. Really safe neighborhood. One day this white duck appears. The street starts putting basins of water out and leaving corn and whatnot. One night, about midnight, I get off the bus and am beginning the short walk home. The moon was large and bright. I come around the corner and see the white duck glowing in the moonlight about 10 meters in front of me. Cute. Then I look beyond the duck and see a woman dressed in a white dress standing dead still. She starts convulsing and she bends the wrong way. There was someone else with her, though I couldn't see them clearly. She was making these noises. I would have had to walk past her to get home quicker. But I said not today, Satan, and walked an extra 500 meters to get home. The next day the duck was gone. I think about that duck all the time. Bill Murray once stole one of my fries at a restaurant. Opened the fridge and a jar of mustard came falling down. It hit the ground and I already thought, great. Now I have to clean all of it up. But I genuinely didn't hear it hitting the ground. When I looked down there was nothing there. No glass shards. Mustard. Nothing. Looked around for a good 5 minutes questioning my reality. Turns out it kinda repelled off the ground and landed on the winner shelf, next to the fridge. Like 1.5 feet above the floor. Upright. Standing. It straight up did a bottle flip off the floor. It dropped a solid 6 feet on hard ground and just bounced. Still questioning the laws of physics to this date. When I was 23 hiking in the woods looking for rock and mineral specimens, I found a moonshine encampment and the guys almost shot me until they realized I was basically a tourist. I bought a 1-gallon glass jug of moonshine from them and happily went home. I was rowing through the middle of a nearby lake. Coming home from fishing. The lake is flat as glass. Not a single wave but the ones I made. About 11 AM. I stopped for a second. Because one of the oars popped out of its socket. And it was bitch to fix. Suddenly something bumped the boat from below. Hard enough that I fell on my ass and the boat started rotating in place. Until it was ass backwards. After 3 seconds. There was the same dead stillness again. Not a single wave. The only non-creepypasta explanation I can think of is that there were divers in the lake who decided to fuck with me. My whole life. I look like an average, older person. When I would speak people would just look in disbelief, so I learned to shut up. Seen people, plural, commit suicide. Stopped a person killing themselves. Been a DJ. Been in brass bands and orchestras. Sister was about to have her life support turned off but survived. Been married 3 times. Been threatened with death so many times I've lost count. Serious threats. Been shot at. Narrowly missed being raided by feds. On 2 sides of the Atlantic. Have friends that have received Oscars. Created first magazine mounted CD-ROM. The list goes on. Just your average middle-aged person. Survived a fall off a 5-story building with no damage. I don't have one super crazy one, but I have a couple of pretty crazy ones. I bit a kid on the back in prep. It's an Aussie thing and basically like grade 0, because he knocked over my block tower and no one got in trouble. He also wasn't wearing a shirt for some reason. My dad pushed me and my tricycle down a hill. I fell off. Cried like a 3-year-old because I was 3 and got swarmed by dingoes. Almost died to a car because when I was 6 I didn't know how to operate the brakes on my bicycle, so I was about to cross the road when a car was like 30 centimeters away from me. Almost died when I was 10 because we were climbing a mountain and I slipped. Might add more later if I remember more. I lived a double life in high school full of partying and drugs. I didn't do the drugs. They were just around me. Lived in the Philippines and at night I would go to the red light district and go to strip clubs and whatnot and just kinda hang out and drink and watch the strippers. Became a regular at one place to the point where I would get free drinks because the strippers and bartender liked me. No one believes me because I was 16-17 at the time. Did that stuff for like a year before I figured I should probably stop. One of my escapades involved a guy trying to aggressively sell me Viagra. So I had to go hide in a strip club for a couple hours. The guy wouldn't leave. Ended up making out with one of the strippers and didn't get home until about 3 to 4 am. I walked in on a family friend having sex with 3 different women and saw over a dozen women either naked or fully clothed just talking or drinking waiting for their turn. Family friend saw me and tried to get me to go back to my room. Next morning he took me out to buy me whatever I want. Not to keep his escapades a secret but as an apology for seeing his flopping hammer of a penis. I once lost both my keys and phone in separate parts of New York City. And got them both back. The phone was on a stoop in Hell's Kitchen. The keys under a table in a restaurant in Times Square. Oh. And I found a $20 stuck in a storm drain too. Craziest hour of my life. Okay, kinda long story, but I was dating a hippie guy when I was around 16. One day we went to visit some of his friends that I hadn't met before. They'd built their own home on a secluded property by the beach in rural Australia, and they were almost entirely self-sufficient. Anyway, they had this cute dog that I played with and patted. He was really friendly. Later on I was sitting down with this dog just messing around and giving it kisses when suddenly it pulled away from me and looked at me really strangely. Right in the eyes. And I looked back at it. Confused. Rookie mistake. That's when the dog launched at my face and bit right through both sides of my top and bottom lip. I screamed so loudly and was quickly driven back into town for shots and stitches at the hospital. Turned out the dog was their pet dingo. TLDR. I was bitten on the face by a dingo. Whenever I try to tell people, nobody believes me. I'm a cat person now. When I was about 12 I had one of the worst migraines ever. It hurt so badly I thought I would pass out. Then I saw what can only see as a ghost. It was a person-shaped shade of indistinct energy that appeared to grow larger as it approached me. As it passed through me, I flinched in fear and in an instant my headache was completely gone. The really weird part came about 10 years later. I was in deep meditation learning from a medicine woman. I had a kind of out-of-body experience. I perceived that my consciousness was drawn to a specific time and place. I saw a boy lying on a couch gripping his head in pain. I approached him with a desire to help, and when I came closer to heal the boy I saw that the boy was me at an earlier age. Was I the ghost? Did I go back in time and cure myself? Did I hallucinate the whole thing? I cannot say. But it was a mind-blowing moment. I was like 12 years old and played with my dog in the backyard. He suddenly stopped and just looked at my leg. There was a piece of wood in my leg. It was 8 centimeters long and in 90 degrees angle in my leg. It didn't hurt. I didn't feel anything. To this day I'm wondering how this stick found its way into my leg. Waking up at 4 am and going downstairs to drink something. Saw a young deer in our garden. It was Easter that morning. 2 black bears fucking my uncle's truck. I got stuck in a sauna when the door swelled. With a Penthouse Pet of the Year runner-up who was wearing a one-piece swimsuit about as big as Borat's mankini. I kissed with a girl in the middle of recess when we were 5. I robbed a train with the Russian mafia. A few years back I was at a beach and this hot lady was sunbathing completely naked from the waist up. I was walking past but didn't really notice since she was lying on her stomach. She saw me coming from the corner of her eye or something and then pulled me down and immediately started kissing me passionately. I didn't really know her but went along with it, grabbing her breasts and such because why not? Anyway, after some time she stopped saying it feels different and then I asked different to what? She lets out a shriek after hearing my voice which scared me a bit but quickly realized it wasn't my fault so it was fine in the end. Turns out she wasn't wearing her contacts and mistook me for her boyfriend because we had a similar build in the same beach shorts. My best friend in grade school told me to think fast and proceeded to throw a basketball at my face. I suck at all sports so it hit me square in the nose. Blood was everywhere. And my friend nearly passed out. Nose is no longer broken. I go to same friend's birthday party about 2 days later and in all my excitement I thud into their glass door. Back to the hospital, where the nurses and doctors are convinced my mother is beating me. They had a social worker talk to me separately and I was so animated in my story they had no choice but to believe I was just stupid. I got one. I used to smoke a lot weed as a teenager and one day I was sick but decided to go smoke a blunt with my friends anyways. I felt alright while sitting down but then I got the urge to get up and basically what happened was the same event about 30 times in a row. I leaned up against the doorway. Friend asked me if I was alright. I said I should go. Then I reset to the position I was in before. I leaned up against the doorway. Friend asked me if I was alright. I said I should go. This went on for about 30 times. I didn't go unconscious and I even asked my friends what they saw and they all said I just did it once. I stopped smoking weed after that. My freshman in university, I went to the financial aid office to get my grant and loan checks. My name and social security number were typed into the new computer system. The head of the office came out to meet me a few minutes later. According to their records, they owed me $6 million. Before I could say I'll take a check, the guy explained how this was obviously some kind of error and that it was not possible for the university to owe that much to any single person. Please come back in a week and this should all be straightened out. So next week comes around and I went through the same routine with the same people as before. However, this time I owed the school $6 million. They gave me an invoice that said I had 1 month to pay up. I was in the car with my mother and we drove through the end of a rainbow. I didn't think it was possible but we saw it touch the ground in front of us and then we went through it. It had an orangey glow. Not as crazy as other comments on here, but I once cracked open 2 double-yolked eggs in a row. I like watching wild birds at my work. I watched a young magpie steal bread off a raven. The magpie's family then attacked the young magpie, took the bread off and gave it back to the raven. They were bird yelling at the young bird, then called to the young magpie and kinda forced it to the front of the pack to the raven. The adult magpies gently pecked at the young magpie until it sung at the raven. Then the magpies all waddled away and went back to hunting for bugs. I feel like I watched some sort of family magpie discipline to prevent an interspecies bird war. On my first day of school, in I think social studies, I had a sudden feeling of content knowledge that I knew everyone. That kind of feeling you get when you've been there for a while. Which didn't make any sense, as it was the first day of school and I knew I didn't know any of these other kids. Then the feeling went away as I questioned it, and I shrugged it off. Until during the last week of school, in the same class, bored and ready to go, I suddenly felt mildly panicked that I didn't know anyone, as if it was the first day again. Then I remembered how I felt on the first day. I think I experienced a time swap. Like and subscribe if you want to.